Welcome back, gamers. I am Danny from Nintendo K channel. Today is my top 5 of the coolest, greatest Super Nintendo games in my collection. So with the recently announced Super NES Classic Edition, I was really excited to bring out my favorite games of all time for the system. And I do remember fondly of all the games that I played when I was such a kid, and my parents getting me on the holidays. Just a fantastic system. It was really hard to pick my top 5 of the entire library of the game, especially going through my collection. I actually made a Nintendo game room tour showing all my entire collection I gathered over the years. So if you guys are interested, do check it out in the description. Also, I'll put a card above my head if you guys want to check that out, and you can see my 3-room collection of all my games combined. So I'm gonna go straight into the meat of everything. But before everything, just leave me below in the comments what are your favorite Super Nintendo games if you definitely have grown up with the system back in the 90s. And I certainly would love to hear what you have to say, because there's so many of them out there that I can imagine you guys have your own favorites. So the number 5 for me is Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, a very fantastic game that I remember when I got it in the early days of the Super Nintendo's lifespan. And this is actually the first 3D game that I played in my entire life, because you can look back at the graphics, it's very blocky. Of course, it looks very primitive and nowadays, but Nintendo actually advertised this game as the first game to initiate using the Super FX chip that gave its really awesome next generation look, and the gameplay is fantastic. You could always pick the difficulty, you picking the direction of which path you want to take. That changes the difficulty, obviously. The action is so packed, and it gets you adrenaline pumping all the way through to the very end, to the final boss with Andros. So a really fantastic game. I can definitely play it anytime, even to this day. So moving on to number 4, it's a game that needs no introduction. It's actually one of the best adventure games of all time. That is Super Metroid. A game that is such depth in atmosphere. The music is bone chilling, and I could go on and on for this one. The adventure is just so in depth. I love the way that you can eventually gather all the weapons that Samus needs to go through the actual puzzles, the levels. And the thing is, like I said, the atmosphere is what gets you drawn into the game, and really one of the best of all time for Super Nintendo. Now going to number 3 is one of there's a tie, because actually there's 2 games for it. Is Super Mario World and also Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Now the reason why I picked these 2 is because they're very brings a lot of memories for me, especially Super Mario World, where I actually played a lot with my father. It's one of the best games, and actually the launch game for the Super Nintendo. I got this with my system itself when I was a kid, and this is actually my child copy. I do remember the first time when you go into the first level, and you actually get introduced to Yoshi, and that really changed the gameplay mechanics, because the last game before this when I played was Super Mario Bros. 3 for the NES, and the graphics, the look, the sound, the world, the hub world is amazing. It's like there's like previous Mario game, take it to the next level. And like I said, I do remember finally playing this game with my dad, and he was great at it, and I still cherish that moment, and that's why this game is very special to me. The next game, actually on the same tie, is this Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. A very fantastic platformer with the mechanic this time around is Yoshi having to pretty much take the spotlight out of Mario, because Mario is usually the main protagonist, but this time it's Yoshi, where he would deliver baby Mario back home to, I guess, to his parents, I would say. But the graphics is such a different take from the previous predecessor. It's like a art book kind of, coloring book kind of look. And the play, the graphics, it pops out, the colors are amazing, and I love the way that this time they changed the mechanic of not having a time limit. You can actually play the level as long as you want, but then that makes the level design in a way that you can play more in depth, and actually it's more elements in the gameplay itself. So a really fantastic game, and I know Evelyn loves this too, because I introduced this to her very recently, and now she's into Yoshi's franchise. So this is a very must-have game for the Super Nintendo. Alright, so this is a number 2 is a game that is one of my favorite Donkey Kong Country games of all time. I know that there's 3 for the Super Nintendo, and there's also for the Wii and the Wii U for Tropical Freeze. But this one I hold true to my heart, because it is the game that I love everything about. The graphics is amazing. It's like, can you imagine Super Nintendo having graphics like this back in the day? We used to call it ACM graphics. It's made by Rareware at the time that Nintendo was partnered with Rare, and they introduced such a varied game, like a different take on the platforming genre that has a bouncy element when you jump with Diddy Kong and also with Dixie, and like I said, the sound, the music is, oh my goodness. Even to this day, I still hum and listen to the soundtrack for this game, and it's so timely. I know that many out there see that this is the pinnacle of the music for the Donkey Kong Country with David Wise's work on the game, and that really draws the environment out. And I can just say this is the ultimate Donkey Kong game of all time for me. Now, the number one, if you can obviously tell, I'm a very big Zelda fan, and that is the Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And this is my number one, a really engrossing, engaging game that I remember I put countless hours into getting into the very end, beating Ganon. What can I say? It is the ultimate experience for Zelda back in the day, because I was, when I went in the back of the time, I played the NES Zelda games, and those were amazing in itself, because it's the first time that you can actually go into a world that you can go anywhere you want, and then you just progress into a storyline that I ever play. And this one really take it to the next level. And I can say and attest it for myself, for everyone out there that I grew in my generation, this is one of the must-have games for the Super Nintendo. Such a great Zelda game, definitely. An honorable mention, since that was number one, is the Super Mario RPG, The Legend of the Seven Stars. Also hold true to my heart. This is the last Super Nintendo game that I had in my collection before I moved on to Nintendo 64. A fantastic collaboration with Square Soft at the time. The company is now called Square Enix, but the characters, the development of the story, the gameplay, the look, it has this 3/4 graphics element that you can look kind of like on a side downward. I don't know how you would call it, but it's not like where the level is side scrolled, but a really great story, very great game. I really can't emphasize enough how you must play this game as well. So these are my top 5, or you could say top 6 was an honorable mention with Super Mario RPG, of the best Super Nintendo games that I believe that I have in my collection. And there are tons other in my collection that I believe is really up there in the ranks of being the top games for this console. Again, it was so hard to pick the top 5 here because I limited to 5, because those are the games that I played the most, absolutely the most hours, that I have most memories of playing it as a kid, and to this day I still cherish that. So again, leave me below down in the comments what you think are your top 5 Super Nintendo games, because there are a ton out there and I'm interested in what you have to say. So I am Danny at the Nintendo K channel. Please give us a thumbs up you enjoyed this top 5. Subscribe to Nintendo K, that's always helpful, and I'll catch you again in the next episode.